This is Columbus Concerns, a public affairs presentation of North American Broadcasting. Here's your host, Mark News.
And thanks so much for joining us this morning on Columbus Concerns. This is Children's Mental Health Awareness Month, and with us today is the Executive Director of the Ohio Children's Trust Fund, Lindsay Williams. And thanks so much for being with us today.
Yes, thanks so much for having me.
For those who don't know, tell us about the Ohio Children's Trust Fund.
Sure. We are Ohio's sole dedicated public funding source for child abuse and neglect prevention. So our mission really centers around investments in child abuse and neglect prevention programming to help strengthen communities and strengthen families and children.
And you're part of the Ohio Job and Family Services Department, is that correct?
That is correct.
And talk about where your funding comes from.
Absolutely. So we are what is called a quasi-governmental agency. So while we are housed within the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, and they kind of serve as our administrative agent, we also have a 15-member board that we report to, including some members of the state legislature. And so the majority of our local funds come from state-dedicated public funding, which comes from just a small portion of when you get a birth certificate or a death certificate. Some of that funding comes to us. And then we also receive a number of federal grants. We are the state lead agency for community-based child abuse prevention, and we are also Ohio's chapter of Prevent Child Abuse America.
What would you like Ohioans to know, not only about your agency, but what's happening in the state as far as preventing child abuse?
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, it is Children's Mental Health Awareness Month. And so I think it's really important to share with people that, mental health concerns don't just happen to adults. It happens to children as well. And we all have challenges in life, including children. And, as parents, as community members, as adults in the lives of children, it's important for us to slow down, to recognize that, and to help, create those supportive environments and positive experiences for children where they can grow up and learn to grow and thrive in their communities.
Certainly the pandemic had an impact on what you do.
Absolutely.
Tell us about it.
Okay. So we do a lot of upstream prevention, and that means we want to connect with families very early on in their communities, help build resiliency for families, help provide any kind of tangible support items families might need, help build social connections, everything that we can do to strengthen and support families that may, have some sort of risk factors for child abuse and neglect so that we can prevent them from needing to become involved with the children's services system. And so, of course, with the pandemic, that heightened stress for parents in Ohio tremendously. And as, we saw a lot of, people come home, and now kids were, participating in virtual schooling with the stay-at-home orders. We really did during that time see a trend down in child abuse and neglect reporting. However, we know that with the heightened stress and, the economic difficulties that families were experiencing during that time, that there likely wasn't truly a decrease in abuse and neglect. It's just those, trusted adult supporters, teachers, daycare providers, coaches, faith-based members of the faith-based community did not have their eyes on children as much. So we did see a trend down. Since things have been slowly returning to quote-unquote normal, we have seen things come back to pre-pandemic level. But we've learned a lot in that time. Mm-hmm. All of the agencies that we work with across the state and the providers really had to pivot very quickly during the pandemic. So, we had providers reaching out to families. They had to pivot to provide services virtually. We had to make sure families had connection to technology. And we really put a lot of funding into providing some of those more tangible support items that families may need to get them through those difficult times.
We're talking today with the Executive Director of the Ohio Children's Trust Fund. It's Lindsay Williams. And before I have any more questions, why don't you tell us what's your website address where people can get more information?
Yeah, absolutely. It's OCTF at octf.ohio.gov. Our website has resources where you can go in and look depending on where you're at in the state. You can see services that are available to you. There's also a lot of articles for parents to be able to learn about different parenting topics.
I see that you deal with, and I'm going to give you a couple of acronyms here, PCEs and ACEs, Positive Childhood Experiences and Adverse Childhood Experiences. Talk about those and what that means to the children of Ohio.
Sure. So adverse childhood experiences are things that, many of us experience, but when you hit a certain level of having so many adverse childhood experiences, and this can be anything from, losing a loved one early on to experiencing your parents having a separation or a divorce to a little bit more challenging things. Maybe you might have a parent that's incarcerated. You might have a parent that's dealing with a substance abuse or mental health problem, up to and including, violence in the home, child abuse and neglect. Those are all things that can really impact an individual over the course of their lifetime. So, for example, it can increase like depression as much as 44% in adults, heart disease as much as 27%, and the number of adults with asthma as much as 24%, just by these experiences and the trauma and the toll they take over our lifetime. But something, and I'm going to go back and tell you a story.
Great.
So I have been in this field of work for probably 18 plus years at this point. And I started back as a child welfare caseworker. And I can remember working with families and adults, parents, and, they would tell me their stories about their childhood. And you would see situations where some adults experience, some horrible traumas as children. But, you'd see some cases where that adult would manage to overcome those situations and be able to thrive and be a functioning member of society. And then you would see similar situations where those adults were just so severely traumatized and dealing with those issues from their childhood that it really impacted their adult life. And you would wonder, what makes the difference? How can two people have very similar childhood experiences and experience these horrible traumas, yet you have somebody that's able to overcome that and make that difference into adulthood, and others that just are really struggling? And so there's a newer emerging research around the PCEs, the positive childhood experiences. And what research is telling us is that having these positive childhood experiences, even if you have adverse childhood experiences, it can kind of mitigate the effects of those experiences and help to develop kind of those protective factors. So, resiliency, that ability to bounce back. And those positive childhood experiences can be anything, from having family that you are able to talk to about your feelings, feeling supported by your friends and your family in difficult times, participation in traditions, community traditions, family traditions, things like that, feeling of belonging in school, feeling of being supported by your friends. One of the things that we really focus on at the Trust Fund is the importance of having even a single positive adult supporter. And it doesn't have to be a friend or a relative. It can be a coach, a teacher. Our campaign messaging at the Trust Fund is really around everyday Ohio heroes. And that's really the message we try to convey with that is, yes, it's important to feel safe and protected by an adult at home, which is also a positive childhood experience, but not all children have that. Mm-hmm. But having those everyday Ohio heroes in their lives, the teachers, the coaches, the neighbors, can really make all the difference.
We're talking today with the Executive Director of the Ohio Children's Trust Fund, Lindsay Williams. The website is octf.ohio.gov. Again, that's octf.ohio.gov. Lindsay, tell us a little bit about the programs that you offer for parents.
Absolutely. So, as kind of that state level organization, we're an umbrella organization, and we work with 8 regional prevention councils across the state. So, compositions of kind of prevention oriented specialists from different counties are appointed to our councils, and they help to direct funding at the local level. So, we fund programs at the local level with the partnership of our regional prevention councils. So everything from parent education, we fund a lot of parent education, providing, those tangible economic, we call them concrete support items for families through our programming, mentorship programming. One program that I really love is called the Parent Cafe model, and it brings parents in the community together. And when you go to a parent cafe, we have a parent leader that will kind of facilitate a topic, because parenting is hard, and we want to build those social connections and let you talk to other parents about your struggle. But at the same time, we don't always have childcare and things like that set up. So when you go to a parent cafe, you have childcare set up, you have a family meal together. And so it's really a way to bring parents together in kind of a positive, supporting environment. Another program that we run on a broader level that I really love is called our Early Childhood Safety Initiative. And so we're funding this in 54 of Ohio's 88 counties currently. And this is for more low-income families and parents with children under 3. But it pairs a brief parent education session around a specific topical area with, giving that parent some concrete support items for their children. So it might be, beds, pack and plays, cribs, car seats, but it might be baby safety gates. It might be high chair, it might be special developmental toys. And then the parent education is kind of geared around the items that the families receive. So that has been, just really a great program for families, especially through the pandemic, where we saw an increased need for those kinds of supports.
And on the website, you can go and there's literally a big box you click on there that says support for parents, right?
Absolutely, yes. And there's articles for parents, but then you also can go under the What We Do tab and look at your area of the state, and you'll see a list of providers that we fund different services.
You talked about those positive experiences, and you talked about not only parents but leaders in the community, schools, churches, other organizations, sports teams. Do you work with other organizations like that and with the school system?
Some of our providers will work with the school system. So we will fund some programs that will happen with youth in school, within the school system. And then at the state level, we partner closely with the Ohio Department of Education. We'll provide them materials and resources. Actually, last month in April, April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month. So during April, I had the opportunity to go out to a couple schools and talk to youth about child abuse and neglect, and about things that they can do to be good friends to their peers and help to support them, and kind of just remind them of that notion that and kind of goes back to Children's Mental Health Awareness Month, that kids struggle too, and it's important to be able to be a good friend and recognize that kids may have stuff going on at home that you don't know about and you don't see when you're at school.
What are some of the things that all of us should be looking for if we want to protect children, or if we think there's a child that may have a mental health problem?
Sure. So when you're thinking about abuse or neglect, you're looking for if kids have really dramatic behavioral changes. So maybe you have a child that's typically very introverted that all of a sudden is expressing, some aggressive behaviors, or it might be the reverse. You might have a child that's normally very extroverted that now has become very introverted. Dramatic shift in grades, obviously, physical signs of abuse or neglect, bumps, bruising, things like that. And you'll see a lot of connection with, mental health concerns for youth, and it could be kind of similar, So backing away from abuse or neglect, if you think about mental health concerns for youth, it usually is kind of either those changes in behavior or really becoming kind of introverted. Maybe the kids no longer find interest in things that they used to find interest in. And that's always a good time to kind of check with them. And that goes back to some of those positive childhood experiences, and just being supportive, listening to their feelings, checking in with them, seeing what's going on. And, if a parent or somebody is concerned about, the mental health of your loved one, there are, wonderful counselors and mental health therapists out there that are specifically trained to work with youth.
The Executive Director of the Ohio Children's Trust Fund, Lindsay Williams, is here. This is Children's Mental Health Awareness Month in Ohio, and she's here to highlight some of the things that the Trust Fund does and some of the things that are done here in the state of Ohio. I guess when it comes to children and child abuse, and one of the things you hear all the time is there's always a need for people to step up and be foster parents in the state of Ohio. So I guess in the long view, when you look at the state of Ohio, what do we need most to help the kids out right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So from a larger level, we have to kind of focus on, we call it kind of the continuum of care for youth. And we have to focus on both ends of the continuum of care. So on one end, we definitely have a need right now for foster and adoptive parents in Ohio. And so Ohio's children's services system is a county-led system. So each county has a public children's services agency. Mm-hmm. We also have, a great network of private foster care and adoption agencies throughout the state. And so if you're listening to this and you've ever had any interest in fostering or adopting through a children's services system, I would highly encourage you to reach out to your county agency and learn more. And so we definitely have a need on that end of the continuum. Where I work currently is more on the other end of the continuum, and it's really trying to connect families to services and supports within their community. I think a lot of times, there's some stigma around seeking help and asking for help as a parent. And I tell people all the time, parents are not, when you have a child, you're not given a manual, and you think about even to get a driver's license, right? We have to go through all these classes to get a driver's license to, become educated for your career or your trade. But to be a parent, you have a baby and there you are and you're a parent. Yeah. And so there should be, no shame or no stigma associated about seeking help to learn to do, one of the most important jobs in our society today. And then, two, people have tough financial times and go through things. And so, there shouldn't be that stigma around that. So, I think it's just kind of a balance of, where I work now, kind of in more the upstream prevention, like I would like to put all of, the child welfare caseworkers out of a job because, we don't want, to see children have to come into care and to be taken from their families. And that's just very, challenging. So it's constantly a balance.
In the few seconds we have left, give us the website address again where people can find more resources from the Ohio Children's Trust Fund.
Absolutely. It's octf.ohio.gov.
Our guest on the program today has been the Executive Director of the Ohio Children's Trust Fund, Lindsay Williams. And thanks so much for coming by. It was really interesting and a very important topic. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Columbus Concerns, a public affairs presentation of North American Broadcasting. You can send questions or comments about today's show to Columbus Concerns in care of this station, 1458 Dublin Road, Columbus 43215. Or email us at columbusconcerns@napcomedia.com.